Good morning, welcome. What a beautiful day. We didn't expect this much snow, but it's sure pretty. Um, Thank you for braving the weather, the roads, which were just not nice this morning. They were a bit treacherous, but you did it. And thank you for joining us on the holy interwebs. How wonderful to have Zoom, eh? And live stream on YouTube. Makes the world safer and shrinks it. And it allows for community, still allows for community. And thank you all for helping with the service. You guys there on AV, Freya for greeting us, and Pat who was greeting us outside, and Stephanie, thank you. Luke, wonderful music choices. Today, I'm going to talk about joy. And on Thursday, we had a thoughtful Thursday. I don't know how many of you from here have attended. A couple of people for sure I recognize. We had the rabbi from the Congregation of Moses join us, and we talked about joy. And turns out that in the Jewish tradition, joy is a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is a commandment. It's commended. God says so. You must be joyful. Well, how can that be commended, especially when it doesn't feel like it inside? There's a dissonance there. There is some kind of tension and pressure in there. How can that be so? But I'm thinking that if a people who have known adversity on steroids decided that joy should be a commandment, a mitzvah, then I think we should look into it. Because maybe there is something that is worthy for us to consider. It might be a teachable moment. It's a mitzvah. And there it is, it's December. The church is decked, the halls are decked. It is the season for joy, yeah? We say the season for the reason and for the joy. But there is this pressure, right? You turn on the news, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, it's very, very scary. Our country is changing before our eyes. It is turning into something scary, very authoritarian. Life keeps lifing. So it doesn't stop. Just because authoritarianism is bulldozing in, it used to creep in, but now it's bulldozing in. It doesn't mean that our personal troubles stop. So we can set them aside and deal with authoritarianism, and then we'll take our personal problems back on when there's time and energy. No, it all just keeps coming at us. So it almost feels like, does it make sense to be joyful? Like, it's almost a guilty pleasure. Should we be joyful when people are getting deported? It doesn't even matter anymore if you are illegal, but that is horrible. People are getting blown out of boats in water. They have their hands up. Please, don't shoot. And then they're killed. That's what our government is doing right now. Does it mean that if we're joyful in these circumstances, we're not paying attention? Does that mean that we don't care? Well, to answer that, I would like to share two different stories. One, most of us know about Viktor Frankl, who was a Jewish psychologist who ended up in Nazi death camps. And as a psychologist would do, he was both introspective and also watched others in the death camps. And this is the revolutionary understanding that he came up with. He said, the ones who fared better in the death camps weren't necessarily the physically robust ones. The ones who came in and, they just looked like they could handle physical difficulties. He said, instead, it was the ones who found an inner why, an inner purpose to survive. And it could be that they were scrawnier, physically definitely less robust, but psychologically, they had something about them that kept them going. And they are the ones who fared better in the death camps. So their joy didn't look like happiness, but it looked like that inner resilience that kept them clinging to life in spite of all the circumstances. And this is the important bit. In spite of circumstances. Circumstances should tell you you're going to die. It's absolutely hopeless. You're not going to make it out of here alive. And in spite of that, they found a resilience. That was their practiced joy. The other story hits a lot closer to my home, to me. I was thinking that, that I lived the first 20 years of my life in communism. And it was, look, the best thing about it, I have no good things to say about it. It was bleak. It was cruel. More often than not, it felt hopeless. But we experienced joy. And it seems so counterintuitive. And it looked like reading and sharing banned books. It looked like telling jokes about the government. It looked like singing folk songs that were forbidden. It did look like going to church, which was also forbidden. It looked like pulling our resources together and sharing a meal when there was just mustard in the shelves in the stores, or just cans of green beans for months, or then that disappeared and it was cans of green peas. And yet we pulled our resources together and we shared a meal. That's what our resilience looked like. That's what we had joy and we didn't feel guilty about it. So we instinctively understood that in order to make it through with our humanity somewhat intact, we needed to dig deep and find joy and find resilience. So now contrast that with today. And this is what I've been thinking about. Like, what is the difference between back then and now? Because now, even I who has come through that, I feel guilty about joy. And what is the difference? Okay, here's the image I want to share with you. Communism back then, by the time I was born, it felt like everything, it was like a thick layer of concrete. It was solid. It was there, it was set in. It was the air we breathed, the water that we swam in. It was all set in. So what we understood instinctively is like the little seed that finds the tiniest crack. That was, the joy was the seed. And we had to practice it because it was our strongest form of resistance. So those seeds ended up creating enough cracks that solid concrete could not withstand. In the end, it could not withstand. But today it feels different. Because here, this authoritarianism is just setting in. It's like somebody's pouring the concrete now. And we're saying, oh, no, you didn't. Not here. We're drawing the line. No, we're not going to let it seep in here. This is our ground, and we're not going to turn it into concrete. So it feels different, yes? And therefore, joy feels like a guilty pleasure. But my point is that I think we have the sequence wrong. Because we think it needs to be like this. Resistance, we resist, we win, and then we celebrate with joy. And I think it's wrong. My story and Viktor Frankl's story would suggest that joy is the prerequisite for resistance. So, when we had the King's marches or protests, and we were joyful, we did the right thing. There were the ones sometimes who would say, we're not angry enough. It's like we are not paying attention. How can we be joyful? It is the prerequisite for resistance. It is what sustains us, because here's the thing. A joy that is born out of meaning is not complacent. It is dangerous. Because somebody who has found their meaning, their why, will never fall in line. And an authoritarian regime needs fear to thrive, hopelessness, and it wants you to fall in line. Inevitability. That's what an authoritarian regime would want you to believe, that this is inevitable. But if you have your why, if you have found your inner meaning, you'll never fall in line. You'll never say it's okay to shoot somebody who has their hands up. You will never, ever give your permission to treat legal or illegal, undocumented people, documented or undocumented people, the way this government is treating them now. You will never give your permission to a corrupt, deeply corrupt government, because you have found your inner meaning. You know who you are. You know exactly the values and the principles that you are aligned with. Joy, born out of meaning, is never complacent. It makes you dangerous. So, joy is not the victory march. It is the energy drink. It is what we need to keep us going, to keep us fortifying ourselves. It's fortification. That's what it is. Now, how should we build this joy? How should we tap into it? And I think we should look at wisdom traditions. Why not? And I love it how Eric and I, without talking about it, were just in sync. Because there is the practice of mudita in Buddhism, which Eric just talked about. It's the sympathetic or altruistic joy. It is, I'm so happy that this happened to you, that your plans have worked out, that your hopes have been realized even better than you had hoped for. Altruistic joy. I'm happy for you. When good fortune hits you, it's like, I rejoice. It is the exact opposite of Schadenfreude. I'm happy to see you suffer. That's Schadenfreude. No, here I'm delighted. So practice that. Look around. Look at the people who are in your life, and when you see something good happening for them, then rejoice and let them know. Let them know that your joy grows my well-being, my feeling of well-being, my feeling of good fortune. It's good for us. Number two, so that's the mudita. Number two, the meaning finding. Like, go inside and look for your why. Look for your why. What is your why? Why do you care for these principles? Why do you care for these values? How important are they to you? Be clear about that. And get comfortable with them. So when time comes and the rubber hits the road, and it matters how you act, those values and those principles are reflected. You don't back down, you don't shrink away, but you live into it. Because you know your why. You know your why. And then, there is the Hanukkah, when you light the candles. I light my candle, you light your candle, you light your candle, and the light just spreads, and darkness does not stand a chance. We bring and we build that ode of joy together. It's like I share with you that this is what's causing me joy today. It's you, it's the weather, it's the 10 minutes of wonderful music that I listened to today. And make this practice of joy a must, a daily activity. Do this, like listen to music if it fulfills you. Or go for a walk, and on that walk, do not solve problems. Like, don't. And it doesn't mean that you're not paying attention, that you're not serious about your commitment. It means you're fortifying yourself. So when you do solve problems, there's more in the tank. And then you have more clarity and a better vision, a better understanding. So how do we build joy? Well, first of all, we do it altruistically. We rejoice in other people's good fortune. Then we find our inner why, our inner meaning. I know who I am and why I am this way. Why this is important. And I shall never be complacent, therefore. But dangerous? Yes. And then spread it. Just like light spreads itself. Us too. Keep building this movement of joy, of radical resistance in the face of cruelty, unkindness, grief. I know that we can do this together. And I know how important it is. Because when I grew up in communism, that concrete was solidified. So the boots who carried out the cruelty of that regime had a solid surface to march on. But the concrete here hasn't solidified yet. And our job is to make it so that it never will. So the boots that try to march get stuck in this wet concrete. And eventually, they might ask themselves, is this really worth it? This is very hard work. Walking, trying to march in concrete that hasn't set, that's very hard work. And it's our job to never allow that concrete to set. And, believe it or not, one of our best weapons is joy. And so it is. Thank you.